are the special ones because when you do throw out a quote, most of the time it kind of either falls flat or somebody kind of missed it or whatever. But if somebody catches it and they quote back, you're like,
it's gold.
You see it. Oh my God, it's you. Like, we are rolling. It is time for another episode of Cash's Top 5, and we've got a fun one today. I know I kind of always say that. I like to have fun on here, but this one I've been looking forward to. We've been talking about this for almost going on a year now. My guest today, Brooklyn James, joining us. How you doing, Brooklyn?
Hi, doing good. Thanks.
Good. Yeah, no, I will say, it's come up a lot on this pod, previous episodes. I'm a bit of a movie guy, bit of a cinephile, and you yourself also pretty enamored with acting and with film. You are an actress,
Yes.
Director, writer. You have lots of projects going on, multimedia, which I always thought was so cool. I've always been so jealous of some of the great things that you've worked on that I've kind of been able to admire. So, where can I want to make sure people can find your projects. I know you've got a lot of stuff. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you? All that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can actually add me on social media first and foremost. That's where you're kind of going to get more constant content from me. I do a lot of monologues on YouTube. So you can find my YouTube channel actually if you add me on Instagram. And that's It's Brooklyn James. So it's ITS Brooklyn James. It's Brooklyn James. You can also find me on Facebook as well. And if you add me to my YouTube, just go ahead and subscribe for me. You'll get updates on my content there. But I also did a film that recently came out on Amazon Prime, which was kind of a big deal for me. We did like a theater premiere and everything. So that was cool. Yeah, so that's called Black Widow. It was it was actually written and directed by my best friend, Christian. And her company is called Melanated Visions Productions. So you can find that on Amazon Prime under Black Widow. If you get kind of lost, so there are a lot of Black Widow titles. If you get a little lost, look for Brooklyn James. It'll pop right up for you. Check me out.
Awesome. You've got kind of the Black Widow vibe. You got the black and the red kind of. I like that it's kind of all together. Yeah. Okay. So we've been talking about this. We were kind of narrowing down the top 5 that we wanted to do. We talk about acting and movies and whatnot. And we landed on one that I think is really good because I feel like it's going to put some good out into the universe because I think people will discover these films and hopefully enjoy them the way we have. We are going to rank our top 5 most underrated movies of all time, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So I got to ask before we get started, we'll kick it off here soon. Was this tough for you? Because I had a very hard time. I had a note open on my phone, just a mile long of movies. I'm like, oh, that's one nobody talks about, but it's so good. Was it tough to get it down to 5?
You know what? It actually was a little bit easier for me because there are some movies that I've just been thinking about for years. And I'm like, how does nobody love this movie? Like, why aren't we talking about this? Why didn't this win awards? Like, there's a few. I'd say at least 2 or 3 on my list that have always been in my mind. And so the others, I did kind of have to go through a bit of like, okay, what else is out there? What doesn't get the credit that it deserves? So it wasn't too hard, I'll say that.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to hear your list and to hear the reasons why. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Our most underrated movies, our top 5 of all time. Brooklyn, what do you got at number 5?
Okay, at number 5, it's a 2002 film called Kung Pao Enter the Fist. Have you heard of that?
Of course, yes. 2000.
Okay.
I mean, that was 02 was like middle school on the verge of high school age because I think we're about the same age. I might be a little older than you. I feel like that was kind of panned by critics and it didn't do well, but this one for you,
definitely
struck a chord.
I mean, even in the box office, it did well. Like it made some money. The budget on it was like 10 million and it made like 17 million. So
so that's a win.
Yeah, like it's a win, but it was pretty negatively reviewed by everybody. I mean, I think though it gets a bad rap. Now, I don't know if it's just me. I have more kind of a silly sense of humor. But I don't know. I think that movie's funny and it's highly quotable. Like that's one of my favorite movies to just randomly throw out lines in my life. So I don't know. It's a martial arts comedy for the people who haven't seen it, where he kind of takes some footage from an old kung fu movie, and then he mixes. Are we still connected? Okay. Mm-hmm. Then he mixes that in with some new footage to create a new storyline. But it's really, really good. I don't even know what to say about it at this point, but it's one of those things where you just kind of have to allow yourself to don't take yourself so seriously for a minute and just enjoy it.
That's a good call. I like when you say it like that, because there are movies that I really enjoy. Like the first one that comes to mind is MacGruber. I don't know if you've seen MacGruber, but
I haven't.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb that you have to take off that cap of, like, you're not going in and watching Titanic. You're not going in and watching No Country for Old Men. Like, this is just a for fun, super dumb kind of comedy. And those are the special ones. Because when you do throw out a quote, most of the time it kind of either falls flat or somebody kind of missed it or whatever. But if somebody catches it and they quote back, you're like,
it's gold. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's you. Like, there's gold, so few of us in the fan club. It's gold. It absolutely is.
Yes. And those are the kind of movies that I love that have those, they're just highly quotable. Like, you always want to throw out those lines and you kind of say them with the movie when it's going, like your favorite ones. I think that's a great movie for that. So people just got to check that one out. That's my number 5.
Wow. That is such a great way to start off the list. My number 5 for you is from 2014. And I was wondering why it did so well for me, why I connected so much to it. I think I would know why, but it's the movie Chef with John Favreau. He directed it, he wrote it, he starred in it. And you can tell he wrote it because Scarlett Johansson plays his girlfriend, Sofia Vergara plays his ex-wife. It's like, dude, a schlubby guy like you is not landing these chicks, but whatever. But he plays Carl Casper. He's this chef who works in a great restaurant owned by Dustin Hoffman. And he gets fed up with the stress of being a chef in a French restaurant, the cuisine or whatever. He wants to get back to basics. So he quits the job. He gets a food truck. He travels across the country with his son. It's kind of like a father-son story, not quite coming of age, but he kind of rediscovers his passion for cooking. And it's just a really positive movie. It has a lot of Cuban inspired music, lots of brass, lots of horns as they're traveling through the US. They go pick up the truck and then take it and bring it home. It's kind of like when people watch cooking on TV, like, I can't eat it. Why would I watch cooking? There's something about the action in the kitchen. And I feel like the last decade or more, even going back to like maybe 05 or 08, the Batman Begins and the Dark Knight, we've gotten so many gritty, dark, noir versions of movies that this one comes out that's like, no, I'm going to be positive and bright and cheerful and fun. And I'm not going to be a huge budget Marvel movie. I'm going to be kind of a little indie flick that's got some fun, got some flavor. John Leguizamo plays a great little side character, his buddy on the truck that helps him out in cooking. It's just a really fun movie. And I don't think enough people saw it or really appreciated it. And I'm a huge Chef fan.
Yeah, I definitely haven't seen it. I haven't even heard of it, actually. So I'm going to have to check that one out myself.
Yeah, I hope that's my hope for this episode is you're going to have some, I'm going to have some, and anity who's watching or listening, they're going to scribble like,
definitely.
Got to catch, Kung Pao, got to catch Chef, which, wow, couldn't be two more different movies to kick off our under.
Great way to start it, yeah.
I love it. So what do you have at number 4?
Okay, so at number 4, I have another comedy. It's actually a parody comedy. It's Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. It's a 2007 film.
So you got 2 satires, yeah.
Yeah, this one stars John C. Reilly. And it's kind of just this like epic parody biopic. And as you watch it, like maybe you've seen 1 or 2 biopics. So you may not get all of the references in it. I think it has a lot to do with the Johnny Cash story, which I've actually never seen. But I could appreciate it even still because I've seen other biopics. And the more you watch them, the more you realize they do kind of all have these common themes of, I had this hardship when I was a kid and these things made me more inclined to do music. And then it kind of goes through the decades of their life. this movie does it in the most hilarious way. I don't know, man. This one I don't think gets enough credit. Like, I feel like this movie is genius, in my opinion. It goes all the way from like the 50s up to like 2007, and you get to watch his music evolve and his life evolve in a really funny way, but also a really familiar way when you think about all the stars that you've seen their biopics.
Yeah, it's kind of like on VH1, the old Behind the Music series, where they were this band and then they reached heights and then they had the drug problem. They go to rehab and then they have the redemption tour. Like, it's kind of this wrought timeline that they all kind of go through, and it follows that, and it lampoons it so well. I love this movie too.
Yes.
And it's really cool because, John C. Reilly is such a, character actor. People know him probably primarily as he's the buddy in the Will Ferrell movies, Talladega Nights and all the other ones, Step Brothers. But him doing his real acting, like when he appears in Chicago, he's done some indie flicks. For him to have kind of the starring role, that doesn't always work. When you're the B guy or the second fiddle and you get your first time to really shine, doesn't always go well, but he nailed it. And it speaks to the strong supporting cast, all of the comedians that appear in this movie. It's really good.
Absolutely. I think John C. Reilly was actually nominated for a Golden Globe for that film. So
I wouldn't doubt it. But he
got a little bit of recognition on it. But I just think in general, like, maybe it was the impact of when the film came out. But some of the critics, I don't know, they feel like the jokes are predictable. It has kind of 3 running jokes in it. And so a lot of people feel like they get tired, I guess. But I don't think so. I think if you watch the movie, and you were speaking to John C. Reilly's acting, I think he really does deserve a lot of credit in that, because the story could be just straight over the top. Like, it could be slapstick, just super gimmicky. But it actually has a story. Like, it kind of tugs at your emotions at different points in the movie, because the acting in it is just that good. Like, he was that character. So yeah, I definitely think that he deserves more credit for that film. That movie should be seen by more people. It's a comedy classic in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. My number 4 for you would be the one on my list that maybe doesn't qualify. I'll let you decide whether it's truly underrated, because it may be appreciated enough. But 2003, it was my 15th birthday, and I went to a little theater. Like, it wasn't AMC, it wasn't Cinemark, it was like one of those old school little mom and pop theaters that was still around, the Princess Theater in Oxford, Ohio. My Uncle Phil and I went to see School of Rock in 2003, and it was just so amazing. We like watching it in the theater. There's so few movies where you're watching it and you had kind of a smile on your face the entire time you're watching. You're like, this is just so good. And it was one of those. And if we were to do a top 5 of most unrecastable roles, Jack Black as Dewey Finn or Ned Schneebly, Mr. S, in School of Rock, nobody else could do that role. Nobody else could. You could not recast that movie. The music is great, obviously AC/DC, but like the original stuff that they wrote for the film, his interactions with the kids, he's over the top without being too much of a ham. He's really just kind of being his Jack Black wacky self. There's a lot of positivity. There's the gay student, there's the overweight student, the black students that, he kind of works with them and he molds them, and he has important roles for everybody. And everybody kind of feels like on the team. And maybe I'm being a little too sappy with my first 2 picks now that I think about it. But I really enjoy that positivity. And it's one of those, the rewatchability factors there. It's one of those, every couple of years you can throw it on. You're not going to ignore it. It's just that fun. It's just that good. A drunk Joan Cusack singing Stevie Nicks, White Wing, White Wing Dove. Love the movie. Maybe it isn't underrated. Maybe people do love it more than I think that they do, but I definitely wanted to shout it out.
Oh, it's definitely a good one. I think anytime you put Jack Black and music together, you know, you got a winning situation. So
Yes.
I like that movie. I don't know how well people rate it or not, but I definitely like it. So I'll agree with you on that. More people should check that one out.
Good. I appreciate it. So we've got Kung Pao Enter the Fist. We've got Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. That's interesting. Two satires to kind of kick it off. I like it. Not sure where you're going to go with number 3, but let's hear it.
Okay, so for my number 3, we're gonna go to a different genre here. I got The Count of Monte Cristo, which is a
Oh,
2002
wow.
film.
Yeah.
It's kind of an adaptation of a novel that was written in 1844. The storyline is different, but basically what you have is this epic revenge story. And I think it's an adventure type of movie. It's just a really good story. Like the acting in it is really great. It's got Jim, I can't pronounce his last name, but it's the guy who played Jesus in the Passions of the Christ.
Jim Caviezel, yeah.
Yes, Caviezel. So you've got him and Guy Pearce, who played in Memento, which is another good movie.
Yes.
And I mean, it's just really good. Like the chemistry between the actors in that movie works really well together. It's a movie that has a little bit of comedic relief to it. Also in the midst of this big adventure, like action-packed swashbuckler, basically. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, it's a really good movie that it actually, like the part that baffles me about it and why I think it's underrated, like there were no awards for this. There is no nominations. There was nothing. So I definitely think this one's highly underrated. Like it's a really good film. You got to check that out. The Count of Monte Cristo.
So I really like this pick a lot. I think, I don't know if this is true. This is just my gut feeling, but I wonder if there hadn't been a series of those kind of movies just before it coming out, like 1998, you had Leo in Man in the Iron Mask. You know, a couple years before that, I think 93 or 94, you had The Three Musketeers. So you kind of had these swashbuckling, I mean, both are Alexandre Dumas story, his novels that were adapted. You know, maybe people were like, oh God, here's another one that maybe they didn't appreciate it, especially like when you're talking about wasn't up for any awards. It's really good. And it's really difficult, I think, for movies set so far back in history to have a good vibe. Like if have you seen Zorro,
Yes.
Legend of Zorro with Antonio Banderas? It feels kind of fake, like it's, you know, 1800s Mexico or Texas or whatever. You can tell it's a set piece. You can tell that these were sound stages that were built. You know, a movie like Count of Monte Cristo, they really envelop you. You can really feel the vibe. It's kind of like portions of Gladiator, which I did not like, one of my most overrated movies of all time. But the vibe they created, you really felt like it wasn't a production. It didn't feel like you were filming a theater piece. It was really in that world. And I think that's really hard to do. And it's really good when they do it well.
Oh yeah, they did it really well in that film, I think. So yeah, that's another one on my list. Got to check that out. Great acting in that film, I think.
So I got to take a second here for my number 3. I didn't write this one down, the year it came out. Okay, I was off by a year. 2012, my number 3 for you, was based on a book that was huge when I was in high school. I feel like every girl that I went to school with had this book or read it or whatever. Perks of Being a Wallflower is just such an incredible story. Logan Lerman is the main kid, and it's got Emma Watson. Hermione is in it. Paul Rudd plays the teacher. Ezra Miller plays the friend. It's just an interesting story, man. He's an introvert kid. You know, that story's been told a million times, but the relationships that he builds, you eventually learn later on in the film that there's a lot of trauma based in his childhood, and kind of formulates why he does the things he does and why he says the things he says. But the line from Paul Rudd's character, the teacher, you know, we accept the love we think we deserve, is just one of those haymaker sledgehammer lines that you're like, oh my God, that's such a great line. How is that line not 800 years old? And the soundtrack is good. The vibe of it, you know, finding yourself. And then there's that time in the movie where they're in the car, they're in the back of the truck, and they're kind of hurtling through the night, listening to David Bowie, and you see the stars going across, and it makes me think back to a time when I'm an adolescent, I'm in high school. I just got my $140 paycheck from Kmart and I'm king of the world. I'm out with my friends. I'm out with my girl. Nothing can stop me. The future's in front of me. That feeling of total freedom and that feeling of the line from the book, which is in the movie, in that moment, we were infinite. You feel infinite. And I thought it was crazy that it wasn't more well received. It wasn't bigger when it came out, but I absolutely love this movie.
Man, that's another one that I haven't seen, but I'm going to tell you that line, we accept the love that we think we deserve. It's such a good line that I've heard that line, even though I haven't seen the movie. Yeah. So now that I know where it comes from, definitely got to check that one out.
Yeah. I mean, that line is probably stenciled in so many kitchens right now. And it's been memed across
it's everywhere,
social media.
Man. It's everywhere.
But I think you will absolutely love that movie. The acting in it is great. The twists that it has are real. It's not convoluted and it's not overly wrought. It feels natural. And I just love that vibe in the movie. Absolutely. Okay, we've got Kung Pao Enter the Fist. We've got Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. We've got Count of Monte Cristo. So we've got 2002, 2007, 2002. You're kind of in a little bit of a lane there, which I really
I got a
like.
pocket, man, going where, I think
there
were some really good movies being made. Late 90s, early 2000s. So my number 2 is going to be The Village, 2004.
Oh, wow.
M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah.
The Village gets a bad rep, man, for no reason. I feel, well, there's some reasons. Okay. So I think people were caught up on The Sixth Sense, which was a mega hit. I mean, way to break out, right? So people were caught on that and the epic twist. Like some people are still reeling from that twist. Like it was mind blowing. So then, he had a couple of more hits after that. And I think people had gotten to a point where they were watching the movies with an expectation of trying to figure out what's the twist, And so when it came to The Village, I think a really great movie kind of just got really underappreciated because the twist wasn't what people were expecting it to be, or some people felt it was too obvious or whatever the case was. But what I think M. Night Shyamalan did with The Village is actually craft a really great story. Like he really showed his ability for storytelling. And so you have this film that is, I think, was marketed wrong. So it was marketed kind of as like a horror film almost. And so a lot of people were going with this expectation that it was going to be really scary, and it really wasn't. It's more of a thriller, I'll say. And so I think that was part of the problem with it. But overall, I think that it is a really good story, and the way that it reveals itself slowly throughout the course of the film, I don't know, it's just crafted really well. I don't always know how to express it, but man, The Village is one of those movies that really does get slept on and gets a lot of bad reviews, but I think it's one of those ones that's worth taking another look at.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think you nailed it perfectly. If The Village came out in 1997, 2 years before The Sixth Sense, everybody would be raving about this great taut movie that's got this incredible twist that you don't see coming. But because The Sixth Sense wasn't just hit M. Night Shyamalan's movies, Hollywood in general, if you go watch pretty much anything from this pocket we're talking about, from 99, 2000 till about 04, 05, even a little later, 06, 07, so many movies came out with twist, and then there's a twist, and then there's a plot twist, and then you didn't see this coming. It's like, it's really hard to do that well, and a lot of them did not do it well. Like the worst one that comes to mind, Lucky Number 11. Did you ever see that with Josh Hartnett and
no, I haven't seen that one either.
Oh God, it's so bad. I'm not even going to get into it. You can watch it. You can look it up in Wikipedia what the twist is. It's pretty terrible, but there was a rash of those in the early 2000s. And I completely agree. Sixth Sense brought it up to here, and it almost became Tarantino-like, where it was an event. There are certain directors, when they come out with the new film, it's a big deal. Like Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, which was kind of like the indie sneaky one a year later that had some twists in it. But then Signs came out 2002, first time we really get a really big budget look at Joaquin Phoenix. And that was definitely more thriller, kind of scary, kind of horror. So I think you're right. Village, it was marketed to be kind of scary, kind of horror, and people went into it thinking they knew. It's kind of like Anthony Jeselnik is this comedian who's very dark humor, and he has these twists on his jokes, and people are, before he even gets to the punchline, they're looking for the punchline. Like, well, you're kind of ruining the experience when you do that. I agree. That's a great pick. The Village, I think, is very underrated for what people say of it, and I think people should give it another shot because it holds up really well too.
Absolutely.
Even when you know what the twist is. Okay, so my number 2 for you is right in that pocket as well. We're looking at 2002. I had Chef, I had School of Rock, I've got Perks at Being a Wallflower at number 3. My number 2 is from 2002, 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams.
That is a good one. I have seen that one. I love that movie.
It is incredible. And it's one of those movies where you can kind of tell if you're going to vibe with somebody or not. Like instead of this one throwing a quote out, you're going to watch Robin Williams in a super creepy movie where he is not the genie and he's not the radio guy and he's not the teacher. He's a mentally disturbed, traumatized, creepy guy. And you kind of see his descent into madness with his obsession with this family. And it's a testament to just how amazing an actor and performer Robin Williams really was, because it's, you talk about the tragedy and the comedy of acting the two masks. As brilliant as he was as a comedian is just as brilliant as he was as tragic and as an actor. It seemed so real. It was heartbreaking. You know, the loss he felt, the betrayal he felt, because he had he lived in this different world, man. Like when they kind of show that pan scene of him in his apartment, you really feel sad for the guy. And then of course, how it all kind of devolves from there. It's also just a really original story. You know, we see these movies where it's like, okay, this is their version of that story that's been told a million times. And I'm not saying 1 Hour Photo broke crazy ground. I'm sure, you know, there are other stalker, obsessive type, you know, voyeuristic type movies that are out there. But to see Robin Williams in such a different role than what we're used to in creating this world, and you start to think about all the snapshots you have in your life and all the memories you have in your life, I don't know. It's one of those that just, it's like peanut butter. Like you say, it sticks to your ribs. That's a movie that sticks to your ribs.
Yeah, I can agree with that. When I saw 1 Hour Photo, that was one of the things that stood out to me the most was the performance by Robin Williams, because I mean, he is just was amazing on all levels. God rest his soul. And I mean, he could do it all, you know, from the super, super funny stuff to the super serious. And I would have loved to have an opportunity to see more of that side of him prior to his passing, but definitely a good one. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. We're here. We're at the mountaintop. We're at our number 1. We've got Kung Pao Enter the Fist. We've got Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, Count of Monte Cristo, and The Village. So really, we could kind of go anywhere. You've got a lot of different genres covered here. I like it. I love that. It would be weird if we just had the same.
Right. Yeah, there's movies across the board that deserve more recognition, but definitely for my number 1, this is one of those ones that's kind of stuck with me over the years. And it doesn't get the credit that it deserves. And it's a 1999 comedy. It's like a dramedy almost, called Life, starring Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence.
Absolutely. Yes.
That is a great movie. And we talk about quotables. Like, that movie is highly, highly quotable, first off. And beyond that, it's another one of those that spans across the decades, kind of like the Dewey Cox story. But in that way that it just, that progression of it and the ability, one of the things that I think makes this comedy really good is the cast, because it's
a who's who.
Yes, Bernie Mac, Miguel Nunez, it's got Anthony Anderson, Guy Torry, like there's so many comedians in this film. And that's kind of one of the things that makes comedy gold, I think. I think this is one of Eddie Murphy's best movies since Harlem Nights. Like it's that cast, that collection of great minds all working together in that chemistry that they have on set. And I mean, beyond that, the story is just really good also. It's really cool to follow along with. I think the problem that some people kind of have with it is that when you look at it overall, it's really not a happy story. But I think that's kind of the beauty of it, is because it could take a realistic situation of things that were happening in that time and make it funny. And that's where a lot of comedy comes from, I think, is from real situations and people's pain anyway. So they did this in a really masterful way, in my opinion. Life is it's one of my favorite movies. I think this is my top 5 in general. But it's really? Definitely one, yes, it doesn't get the credit that it deserves. It did not great in the box office. It came in under budget. And even I think on the rating sites, it's got like a 50% rating or something like that on Rotten Tomatoes. Like it doesn't get the credit that it deserves. It's so funny. It's so genius. And the chemistry between the two lead actors is wonderful. It's a great comedy. You got to check that one out.
I agree. It's one of those, I don't know what you would call it. I don't know if you'd call it cafeteria table or back of the bus. But it's one of those, you're sitting around with friends and you quote it and you've all seen it 100 times. Like it's one of those movies that it kind of becomes part of your DNA at one point. Mm-hmm. And you really hit it. I think people probably underestimated it going into it, because most movies, in Eddie Murphy in his career, but also to a lesser extent, Martin Lawrence's career, we've got Eddie Murphy, let's make a movie. Well, we got Martin Lawrence, let's make a movie. And then you end up with Pluto Nash, and you end up with Norbit, you end up with, Daddy Dig, whatever.
Ooh, yes.
But this is a movie where like, we have a great script, we've got a great movie, and we just happen to get Martin and Eddie together. It wasn't, we have to force a project because we have them. Let's get them because we have this. And that really made it such a special project. And I wish more people would see through that. And you're right. I think, and on the flip side of that, I think people who are diehard fans maybe went to see a movie that they thought it isn't what they thought they were going to see at the theater. Mm-hmm. But it does hold up. And I mean, come on, man. Talk about if you could bring him back. Bernie Mac is just Eddie and Martin, yes, but Bernie is a genius.
Yes, absolutely. R.I.P. Bernie Mac, definitely. I think one movie that I kind of compare it to, and this might be a weird comparison, though, is what's it called? With it's a really big movie and I can't think of the name of it. Life is like a box of chocolates. You know what I'm trying to say?
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. I compare it to Forrest Gump because that is another movie where if you look at the story, there's nothing really happy about it. But it's still a movie that finds a way to make you feel good. It makes you laugh. And it's a really, really well-crafted story behind all of that. So it keeps you engaged. Don't know why I couldn't remember the name of Forrest Gump, but yes, that's what I compare it to.
That's how I know you're totally dialed into underrated movies, is you can't remember Forrest Gump.
Yeah, right. One of the biggest movies. Yeah. So, but definitely.
Wow. Okay. Well, you saying that just made me think of one that probably should have made my list, but I can mention it here when we do the honorable mentions. I had Chef, School of Rock, Perks of Being a Wallflower, 1 hour photo. My number one for you, and I'm sure I get tired of talking about this movie, so I'm sure people who have heard me talk about it are getting tired of it. But 2011, 10 years ago, The Adjustment Bureau with Matt Damon and Emily Blunt. is just a masterpiece. And I tried to make this top 5 just not my top 5 favorite movies, because my top 5, top 10, top 15, whatever favorite movies, there are some underrated ones mixed in for sure, and this is one of them. But it's just so important to me, and it's one of those where you can kind of tell what the connection is. Some of it you kind of can't. It's just that baseline. It's just in my heart, in my brain, why I love this movie. The thought of free will versus determinism versus destiny versus God versus the universe versus all these different things at play. It was the first time I really got introduced to Anthony Mackie, who I think is a phenomenal actor. You have John Slattery, who, famous now for being Roger from Mad Men, and just a perfect role for him. It's just a great story. It's a Philip K. Dick sci-fi story from the 50s, where there's the adjustment team. That's the original title of it from the book, The Adjustment Team. But it's these guys that are in 50s trench coats and fedoras, and they have these little books, and they keep everybody on path. You got to make sure that she doesn't arrive to the interview on time. She needs to be late. So make sure you have her spill her coffee, and then they magically make her spill her coffee. And so they keep everybody kind of, in line. It's kind of like having bumpers in bowling. So even if you kind of careen a little bit, they're there to get you back on track, which is just a great story. But then the connection between Matt Damon and Emily Blunt, there are a couple of females in my life, that some met very long time ago, and some that are more recent in my life, where even if years go by and we don't talk, when we get back together, it's like, oh my God, oh right, I love you this much and you mean this much to me. And to really think about true love, soulmates, connected to the predestination, the predetermination of, I don't know, there's so much in play with that. And then the score is just really good. It's not quite Thomas Newman, like the American Beauty type piano, but it's similar in that it kind of creates this overall vibe in the movie. I can watch it over and over and over and over again, and it still gives me more questions to ask than I get answers. And that kind of drives me nuts. But I absolutely love this movie.
Man, you know how I know your list is good? Because I haven't seen any of these, any of the movies. So they're obviously underrated. And I need to get on that, definitely. That sounds like a beautiful story, honestly. So another one I'm going to have to check out. I'm going to have you just make me a list personally.
Like a playlist, but with movies.
Check out, yeah.
We can do a recap episode where I watch, because there's a couple of years I haven't seen, but yeah, we can rewatch and talk about which ones really were. It's like, I think you were kind of off on that one. You may want to
absolutely.
bump that one down the list. So what, great list. What didn't quite make the cut for you?
Let's see. I don't know. I kind of have put those out of my mind at this point.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I don't know. I can't think of it right off the bat, but
well, I had a couple for you. I had some written down. I was like, nah, because I don't know. Book of Eli, I really enjoyed quite a bit. Denzel as the blind man in the kind of post-apocalypse. Also post-apocalyptic, Mad Max Fury Road, I thought was one of the best movies in years and years and years. Absolutely love that film. And Black Snake Moan did not get the shine it should have because of the characters being, she's a nymphomaniac. So anything that's kind of overly sexualized kind of gets brushed away and you don't want to talk about or whatever. But Samuel L. Jackson, that might be his best role ever, because there are times throughout the whole movie where he's not just being Samuel L. Jackson, like he is in a lot of other roles. And the blues mixed in with it was really, really good. And the one that I thought of while you were talking, how it kind of reminded you of one from back in the day, the movie Clue from 1985.
Wait a minute. Okay, that was one that didn't make it. Okay, now I remember. That was one of the ones that didn't make it. Clue absolutely is underrated.
So good.
It's so good. And it's one of those movies that whenever it comes on TV, you just stop and watch it. It's that good.
Yes,
so, yeah.
It's the 80s comedy underrated version of Shawshank. Like when it comes on, I'm gonna watch it.
Yes.
All right. Well, Brooklyn James, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you
Again,
for
I want to
having
make sure
me.
people can find you. So again, plug the links, the usernames, the YouTube, the TikTok. Where can people find you? Where can they find your stuff?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at It's Brooklyn James. If you go to my Instagram, you can also find a link in my bio to my YouTube channel, where you can see all kinds of monologues and random videos, also short films that I've created, and more content coming soon. You can also go on to Amazon Prime to check out the film that I was in, Black Widow, and just look for Brooklyn James if it doesn't pop up for you. Yeah, so check me out, and that's how you reach me. Thanks so much for
Fantastic.
having me, Adam.
Hey, absolutely. I want to do another one with you soon. This was a lot of fun. We've got some homework to do, some movies to watch. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yeah, definitely.